Hello, and welcome to CS492 in fall 2022. In this course, we want to explore the foundations and the future of three contemporary technologies. First, VR, virtual reality. Second, AI, artificial intelligence. And third, MMORPG, massively multi-user online role-playing games. And to this end, we're going to deliberately limit our focus on technological aspects, which are covered already in depth and breadth elsewhere. But instead, we want to take an interdisciplinary and transdisciplinary perspective on these technologies in order to be able to predict possible effects on society, positive or also negative ones, and thirdly, in order to be able to provide advice and guidance to deciders to develop rules, regulation, and perhaps even laws in order to prevent negative outcomes. And the motivation for that, let me show you the slides. The motivation for this, here you see the slides, is that in the past, technological advancements have truly revolutionized a society. So, for example, here you see some rather old technology like a printing press or newspaper, telephone, portable music. These were all combined into one single device that turned out to be so successful that nowadays basically everyone not only has such a device, but statistics say uses it on average 6 hours per day. And that's not even counting work-related use. That's just for entertainment and amusement. Now, whether this is a positive or a negative consequence of technology, I'll leave for you to decide. Instead, move on to the second example, namely the invention of nuclear fission by Pierre and Marie Curie here. And one consequence of that was the first atomic bomb. And the leader of the Manhattan Project that successfully developed this bomb, Robert Oppenheimer, later came to regret having developed and introduced this technology into the world with a quote, "Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds." And still nowadays, we worry about nuclear bombs, atomic bombs, as weapon technology, as a negative use and consequence of this technology. A positive consequence of this technology is nuclear energy, which has the potential of avoiding climate disaster of our world. So that's our second example. And the third example is due to the biologist Galton. Galton loved plants, and so his research was to try to make plants more helpful for humans, for feeding humans, and he would look for means to accelerate the ripening process of crops such as soybeans. And indeed, he found such a substance. But he also noticed that when using too much of that substance, the leaves of the plants would simply dry and fall off in very short time. That was an undesirable side consequence of his main technological research, but it turned out that during the Vietnam, the US military became very interested in just this side effect. Namely, the substance became infamous as Agent Orange, as a means to de-leaf forest, to uncover possible hiding places of the Viet Cong. And the consequences of that use of technology of Agent Orange are still visible nowadays, where parts of Vietnam have been highly contaminated, and also where fetuses have been affected and born with disabilities or stillbirth. And also Galton, for the rest of his life, regretted having made this discovery of this technology being put into the world. So these three examples illustrate that every scientist, every researcher, every engineer should be well aware that whatever he or she develops and invents could possibly be used for negative purposes. And the question, of course, is, can this be prevented? And this is exactly the goal of technology assessment. The purpose of technology assessment is to examine the impact that a newly introduced or developed technology may have future on society, environment, and economy. And this proceeds in 4 phases. First, study an existing or emergent technology before it becomes prevalent, investigate its potential and possible application. Second, envision its direct and indirect, possible intended or possibly unintended technical, economic, health, environmental, human, social, and other consequences. Third, reflect about the consequences from the perspective of the values. What do we want to achieve and what do we want to prevent? And finally, recommend possibilities for action and design, supporting decision makers in taking informed actions, such as developing the rules, regulations, and perhaps even laws to govern the use of this upcoming technology. Now, is it possible to predict potential intended and unintended applications of technology? Well, there are some examples from the past which have been successfully predicting contemporary technology, and I'd like to again give 3 examples. First example is more than 50 years old. In the famous movie 2001, A Space Odyssey, shows first case of a video phone call. Namely here, an astronaut out in the space is making a video call to his daughter on the ground. And just to give you an impression of how visionary this movie was, observe that color TV had been introduced in the United States only 2 years before that movie. And nowadays, everybody's using video phone call technology, right? First example. Our second example is again from a movie, Blade Runner, 40 years ago, kind of predicted building size video billboards and predicted flying cars. Now let's look at the present. And indeed, we do have building size video billboards, and arguably flying cars are on the move. Some first ones demonstrated here, but probably in the future there will be many more of them. And my third example is again from movie or TV series, which predicted self-driving cars. And indeed, nowadays we do have self-driving cars, and maybe in the future they will evolve further. So the baseline is past has sometimes successfully predicted the present. So can we now from the present predict the future? And there are some examples of such predictions, mostly from science fiction movies. For example, with respect to AI, this movie is basically about AI. This movie is about virtual reality. This movie is about MMORPG, and so on. Another movie about virtual reality, MMORPG, and so on. So there are predictions mostly in science fiction movies. In this course, however, we want to take a more rigorous scientific approach beyond science fiction. And to this end, we kind of tap into the other academic disciplines and what has been investigated there. For example, philosophy, history, pedagogy, and complexity. Because indeed, people nowadays talk a lot about virtual reality. They talk about artificial intelligence, but close inspection turns out that most people do not even know what intelligence is. This is something that in pedagogy has been investigating for decades. And people don't know what reality is. This is something that philosophy, for example, has been investigating. So we want to really broaden the perspective beyond the realm of technology, and in order to predict possible positive or also negative outcomes of these three core technologies on society, in order to enable decision makers to devise early regulatory measures, rules, and policies to provide guidance and to prevent possible dual use. And my motivation and background for this is that I used to be spokesperson of the Janus Group at the Darmstadt Technical University, a group investigating precisely such a technology assessment from the two-phase Janus head, one smiling and one frowning, representing positive and negative consequences of dual-use technology. So I'm excited, I'm looking forward to the development of this course, and thank you for your attention, and see you later in this lecture. Thank you.